Going live.
Who are you?
What? What?
I wonder
Where's Larry?
I wonder who people are expecting to see.
Yeah, not us. I don't think so.
No.
Okay,
Well, they got us, and
I got dual monitors going on.
I do too. I'm looking at it on my TV so I can watch the chat. So I want to say hey to everybody in the chat and all our, these are like our weekly friends that we see every week.
Yeah, that's right.
Larry's been doing a little hunting and working. So, he was saying, man, if anybody wants to do a show, and we've kind of skipped a couple here and there, but man, we thought we might try to come up with something just for, give people something to do on a Monday night or listen to later. Anyway,
that's right. Hey, we resemble that comment, Jamie.
Yeah.
Couldn't be more apropos. That's for sure. Okay, well, so we had a short ramp up. We wanted to make sure we gave some content here for Larry's channel. Didn't destroy his brand all in one night, so maybe we'll get another opportunity on down the road.
And really, the show is the listeners are the victims of my OCD, really, because what got me started, my brain, I have to read, and I'm big on science and things like that. And just to kind of segue into what we're going to be talking about, the reason I started thinking about this is last week I had Moose, my dog, over here in a field, and there's a neighbor that has a whippet. And I don't know how many people are familiar with whippets, but if you were to look at one, you would think that thing was like a really shrunk down version of maybe a greyhound or something along that line. But a whippet's
they catch frisbees, right? They're really good catching frisbees, looking acrobatic.
Really, a whippet, they were designed for hunting, and we'll get into this later, but they use them for different sports now. They race those things and have them chase these flags pulled by ropes across the ground. But anyway, Moose got loose with that dog out there, and he's pretty swift. But man, they were hitting gears that you wouldn't normally see a dog hit out of fun out there playing, running victory laps. That's what I call it.
Who was faster? Who was faster?
Oh, well, it depends. If Moose is out front and the dog's chasing him, if it starts to catch up to him, he'll turn around to try to be defensive. He don't want to get rolled. Is what it is. But if he's chasing, that's when, man, you really get to see him stretch out, and he could keep up with that whippet pretty good in that confined area over there, maybe half an acre or so. But I thought that was interesting, and I hate to ramble here at the first, but it's really what got my mind thinking, watching those dogs run, because I handled service dogs, and oh gosh, and I've had to run down a field hundreds of times and catch dogs on attack work, usually German Shepherds, and later on a dog called a Belgian Malinois that many people may be familiar with. And I was just thinking about how some of these dogs, man, they're just rockets. And then I got to thinking, well, man, I wonder how I can, kind of relate this to Bigfoot, because that's what I kind of want the chat to do, is while we're going through this and talking about these known animals and some of the extraordinary characteristics they have, how that relates to Bigfoot as we look at Bigfoot as a biological species. That's going to be our catch here, okay? We're not doing
so kind of the physical attributes of other animals that are out there.
Because this is what you and I discussed earlier.
Right.
There are animals out there, not in just their appearance, but in the things that they do, whether that's learned or whether it's some type of an evolutionary trait. There's animals that do things that if you were to try to explain it to a person, they wouldn't believe it. If they were a non-believer, if we weren't able to see these things on video or watch them on television or see pictures of them, just some of the things in our world that does some pretty extraordinary and crazy things. And then you get to thinking, well, I mean, we just haven't really been able to study a Bigfoot, but it could have lots of these traits and stuff. And we're going to kind of touch on some things like camouflage that some animals uses, the way some animals hunt in packs. We're just going to kind of make a big round around the world to come back to relating it to Bigfoot.
Yeah, we're not biologists. We're just spitballing here.
Really, and we're doing some generalized stuff, and I'm hoping that, man, people get just some fun facts out of a little bit of knowledge or something like that. So that's really what the whole thing's going to be about. I wanted to start from watching them out there running that field. I got to thinking, gosh, I wonder what the fastest dogs are, the fastest dog breeds in the world, because I knew a whippet had to rate up there somewhere. And I've heard people say that if a whippet size-wise was as big as these other fast dogs, that it would probably be the fastest. And I believe that because I've really seen them run. But man, let's go down through some of these. And Larry's in the background, so I'm going to have him play some videos if we can as we go along. But let's talk about let's go to the dog one first. Let's talk about the 10 fastest dog breeds that there are. And some of these are surprising, not just in the speed, but in the breeds of dogs. There's a couple of these breeds of dogs that you would never think was that fast. So people in the chat, we're going to start at 10. We're going to go down to number 1. And if you got guesses or anything, just, throw them up there too. Number 10. They call it the gray ghost. What do you think that is?
Is that the Saluki?
The number 10 fastest dog is pretty common, a Weimaraner.
They call it the gray ghost?
They call them the gray ghost. And you'll find that most of these...
Larry's ruined it already.
Is he? No, that's okay. He can let that one run there.
You heard me say Saluki.
Yeah, because we're going to get up to that here in just a second. But a Weimaraner runs 35 miles per hour. Pretty fast. I think that some of these other dogs that I've worked with probably aren't 1 or 2 mile per hour off, some of these. But number 9 is called a Pharaoh Hound, which if you look at that thing, it really is going to look like our number 1 dog that we'll get to later. But that Pharaoh Hound's really, well, it's very Sphinx looking, like Egyptian looking in the way its ears are made and stuff like that. Right. And that's another 35 mile per hour dog. Now we get down to a whippet. And a whippet's a small dog, not much bigger than moose. Moose is only yay high. A whippet also does 35 miles per hour. But they say per size ratio, it's probably the fastest dog in the world is a whippet. And that's a pretty common little dog. Now, this one may surprise you. And tell me, Scott, if you've ever seen one of these. A Russian wolfhound.
I've seen an Irish wolfhound. Haven't seen a Russian wolfhound. I think the Russian wolfhound's a little different.
These things have the wiriest hair. It looks like somebody just got them down on the ground and rolled them around in a bunch of junk. But I saw one once, and literally the guy could walk it up and it would stand flat-footed and could look in the car window at you. That was a thing that I remember that this dog had, was the height in its legs. It almost looked skin and bones under that wiry hair. But you're getting on up around 36 miles per hour now. Now, this is going to surprise you, man. I couldn't get over this. The number 6 fastest dog in the world is a Dalmatian.
Really?
Yeah, and I would have never thought that. I think that because of, man, the way they look, that I don't know. Most people just don't associate them with hunting or things along that line because just the way they look, I think. And that one, God, Dalmatian runs 37 miles per hour. I'm trying to look at these up there. And as you're going down this list, you'll see that most of these animals are kind of built the same way, whether they're slick haired or whether they have hair or whatever. They're kind of, built the same way. Here's the next one, Scott. A Vizsla. You ever been around a Vizsla?
Nope. I've heard of it.
It's just another hunting dog. A lot of people will get them mixed up with a Weimaraner because they look almost the same. I had a friend that had 2 in the house, and those were the 2 most destructive things in the world because they didn't get the mental activity and the physical activity, that they needed. So that's why they were destructive. The next is, and they're up around 40 miles per hour. I mean, we're really starting to. Now, if you're in a car going 40, it doesn't seem like a whole lot. But I expect if you were standing out in a field and a dog ran by you doing 40 miles an hour, it would seem like he was, cooking pretty good.
Heck yeah. I get mad at cars driving through my neighborhood at 35.
Yeah. Now check this one out. An Afghan Hound is the number 4. And I kind of read up briefly on these, and they come from Afghanistan and those areas over there. And they use those things to hunt in those really rugged mountains and the terrain. And that's something that we're going to try to go over into at the end of this discussion as we put Bigfoot into it. Is, if you put a dog just into a particular category, you're not getting the things that you get from other particular species, if that makes sense. I mean, can label.
Yeah, right now, I mean, we're sitting here thinking about, okay, this one goes 30, this is 35. Now we're up to 40. We're not blinking an eye. We're not thinking twice about that because it's accepted, because we know that.
Right.
If it was if you were just, some people have described encounters where they're driving down the road at least that speed, maybe over exaggerating. Maybe if they're driving down a dirt road, sometimes you feel like you're going fast down a dirt road. And if something's chasing you, but 30, 35 miles an hour, something on 2 legs, running alongside the car.
Which is entirely possible.
Right. As demonstrated by other animals that are out there.
Right.
That we don't blink, that we don't think twice about, that we don't disbelieve, that we don't say, what? You got a 4-legged thing that runs 40 miles an hour? I've never seen that before. I've never seen anything run that fast. So you see dogs running that fast, you wouldn't necessarily believe that either, but we just don't think twice about it.
Right. It's because all of the things that we're looking at known things. That's what I always say. You can read about them somewhere in a book accurately. Let me put it that way. You can read about them in a book accurately, watch videos of them, see pictures of them. Like you and I were discussing, what if you were trying to describe an elephant to somebody that had never seen one before? They'd think you were crazy.
Yeah.
Or a giraffe.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's why that I really think that people have a hard time with the Bigfoot thing simply because we really think we're the only things that should walk around on two legs. If something else is walking around bipedally, then it's really an oddity or something that should be feared or something like that. I didn't mean to get off on that tangent.
Sure.
Anyway, here's one, and I'd never really heard of this dog before, but it really looks like all these other slender running dogs, an Abeezen Hound. And if you look at that thing, it's sleek just like all the other dogs. These really are dogs that you think you would see like in someone's home, like in an affluent home or something like that. That's what always kind of gets me, about these. This thing runs about 40 miles an hour, and they use that thing to hunt in the mountains and all kinds of hard terrains. So that's what always surprises me is these very elegant, let me get my words out. These very elegant, fragile looking dogs, man, they're big time hunters. And a couple of these breeds, especially this Abeezen, and this is something I always find interesting. If they do use them together to hunt in a pack, they usually hunt the females together. And I want to touch on that in a few minutes.
Yeah, it's not uncommon.
Yeah, there's certain. Why is it that particular dog out of all these dogs, or why is this particular species over here figured out that it's more efficient or maybe even a little bit safer to hunt as a pack? But that Abeezen Hound runs 40 miles per hour, and I don't think there's really much difference between the number 3 and the number 1 in speed. But if you get to looking at what they're used for and things like that, the number 2 is that Saluki that was up there a second ago, 42 miles per hour. Now, the number 1 dog, everybody's going to know what the number 1 dog is. Most people, if you ask them, they can guess. Oh, a greyhound's the fastest dog, speed-wise. Yes, but by a mile per hour. So
and that's usually only for a short burst. A lot of these other dogs were bred. These hunting dogs can go for a longer distance at a speed, higher speed than the greyhounds can.
And that's the thing about that Saluki that it's showing up right now. If you ask people, and I've read, this is simply me doing a lot of reading and researching and regurgitate information. That's all it is. But people will say the Saluki is actually the fastest simply because, and I thought this was very interesting, that particular dog breed, the pads on its feet are much thicker and tougher than a greyhound's feet is. Now, I don't know if this is an adaptation or anything, but just like we talk about Bigfoot in different parts of the country, these dogs have adapted to hunting, and they say they can run as fast as a greyhound, but for a long distance over uneven terrain,
right,
hunting like that. So that should make that the world's fastest dog, in my opinion. And just think, even a greyhound only, they say, clocks in at 43 miles per hour. Which, I mean, that's fast for a dog, but let's go over into this next thing. And I'm trying to kind of go through common animals, and then we'll get up into a few more exotic, go up into some exotics and stuff like that. I thought that's the way we would do this. These are the best hunting dogs that there are, the top 10 dogs for hunting. And one little side note, the reason that these dogs are good hunters is one of their trait characteristics are they're methodical in the way that they do it. I'm sure there's people in our chat that's handled bird dogs and pointers. I've handled labs. I've handled 3 labs over my career. So, and even Moose, trying to find deer antlers, he really sections a field super methodically. And I thought that's what was interesting about what rates the top hunting dogs is not necessarily their speed or power or anything. It's how methodically they do things. So let's go through these real quick. Number 10 is an Irish setter. And I'm going to go ahead and jump to number 9 because I've never heard of this dog before. And tell me if you have, Scott.
No.
This thing is called a Nova Scotia duck tolling retriever. Have you ever heard of that before in your life?
No. It's gotta be Canadians.
If you look at that dog, I thought, why does this dog fit in, this category of the top 10? And what's interesting is its biggest trait is the colorings on its body. And they will send that dog out into the water and it literally will swim around and just play around out there and stuff like that. Incoming waterfowl see the white markings and the motion in the water, and they assume that there's other waterfowl hanging out there. And then the hunters, when they see the birds coming, they'll actually call to the dog, and the dog will swim towards them so they can, make a safe shot and shoot the birds. And then the dog will retrieve the birds. But I thought that was interesting simply because it's a number 9 best hunting dog simply because of some white markings on its body.
I'd never heard of that.
I'd never heard of it either. The next one is an English setter, which I know a lot of people are familiar with. And then we go to a German wire-haired pointer. And we start getting into some dogs that if I saw them as a kid, they would probably look like some of the hound dogs that we grew up with.
Most of the traits that are making them good hunters have to deal with mostly with their scent. Is that most of it?
I think that's what it is. And one thing about that I can't remember the dog's name. That Saluki. They said the one thing that makes it also a good hunter, not just the fastest, is it hunts by scent and sight and sound. Mm-hmm. And a lot of these hunting dogs hunt strictly by scent. That really is a dog's. I learned that from hounding dogs over the years to trust the dog, or you can get some really bad situations because of that one. And I always wonder if Bigfoot has a good sense of smell. We've heard different stories about that, but a dog's sense of smell probably below a bear's is probably the best that there is. Now check this one. Everybody's seen this one. Number 6 is a golden retriever. And I've been around lots of golden retrievers. They use them for, not just for hunting, but they're a great dog for scent work, explosives or narcotics, or anything to sniffing out food coming through customs, from foreign countries. I've seen them use them for everything. And number 5 is the gray ghost again, the Weimaraner. Best hunting dogs. I want to remind people of this. Go down to number 4. We're back to the Vizsla again. Now, don't you find that odd that, we're really equating speed to hunting skill, I think, because a lot of the fastest dogs are also some of the best hunting dogs.
Right.
I just find that interesting.
Well, keeping up with their prey.
Now, I know you've heard of this, a Chesapeake Bay Retriever. Have you ever seen one?
Sure.
Yeah, to anybody that has it, they look almost like a lab. You always get them mixed up with a lab, except their hair is a little bit longer and it's usually a little curly along their spine. They're a good water dog.
Yeah, they've got hair that kind of repels water. They got kind of an undercoat also.
Right. This German short-haired pointer, when it comes up, I was looking at this thing, and this is a real muscular, heavy dog. This is probably the one that if I was a kid and saw this, I would have thought, wow, that's the biggest Texas Walker dog we've ever seen. You know, big coon hounds. And the number one is, I think, may still be the number one most popular dog, and that's a Labrador Retriever. Best hunting dogs. And I've handled three labs of two different colors, and they're completely different personalities. Different colored labs are different personalities. But that kind of led me into this. And you and I talked about this. We didn't take into account anything that had to do with intelligence. You know, we didn't really. So this is where I kind of came up with the title of, is Bigfoot really all that? Are they really that skilled, or is it they just know how to do what they need to do very well? Dogs can be trained to do incredibly specific things, and all done with classical conditioning. And I always think you would look at a dog like that, and I've looked at thousands of dogs like that and thought, wow, how intelligent that dog must be. When really we're dealing with a super smart 4-year-old. It's about the mentality that we're dealing with when you're handling dogs. It's all about the reward and whatever the reward is. So they're good at specific things simply because you've conditioned them that they're going to get a reward.
Right.
So I always think, well, maybe Bigfoot's not supernatural. Maybe he's not this or that. Or maybe they're just incredibly good at the few things that they have to do. So think about this. What do you think? You probably know this, Scott. What's the most intelligent dog breed? I wonder if anybody will pop up in chat with that.
I don't know.
You ready?
Yeah. I got nothing. I got nothing for you.
The number one most intelligent is a border collie.
Ah.
Now, I remember when it used to be a standard poodle was the number one most intelligent, and it still rates in the top, at least the top 3. But a border collie, and I just want to talk about this for a second. And I have Larry's got a couple of border collie videos.
How we measure intelligence is it's an ability to do tasks,
the ability to
tasks, or
not just do complex tasks, but being able to do them unsupervised. and the reason I got to thinking about this is I visited a family that had, they call them stock dogs, and they really can use any kind of dog, but the majority of people you'll see them use border collies simply because they're really athletic, and a border collie's a pretty tough dog too.
Yeah.
But I was staying with him, and we went outside, and he had 3 working dogs in pens, and he cut them loose. And the first thing they did is they chased each other around the yard, and it just really looked like they were going to get a big brawl with each other. And he said they simply were, hurting each other and blah, blah, blah. To make a long story short, he gave a couple of commands, and those dogs ran off over the hill out of sight. And we messed around out there for a while. And in a few minutes, those dogs came back with 2 horses and 3 or 4 cows. Walked them right in, walked them through a gate and exactly where they needed to go to. Now, they do this every day, so the horses and the cows know the deal. But if you watch any of these videos where they, not necessarily the competition videos, they have herding competitions. Right. I'm talking the live ones out in the pasture or where they're trying to move new aggressive cattle. Cattle really kill a large number of people a year. Guys that are around cattle. And you and I talked about this, not just the way they train the dogs to do it, but the cows are way bigger than the dog. So why doesn't the cow just, stomp on the dog or kill the dog? And if you watch the guys when they handle those border collies, they really use commands I've never heard before. And when they're trying to get a bunch of cows to move or bunch up, they actually make wide sweeps around this livestock, almost putting their rear end or their side, at least their side, to the livestock. So I asked him about that. Now think of all the Bigfoot stories you've heard where people have come in contact with one and they were frozen in their tracks or something along that line, paralyzed with fear, which I probably would be, by the way. But I got to ask him, and if you watch some of these videos of border collies working, he told me this, and it made a lot of sense. He said that livestock and those horses don't know any difference between that border collie and a wolf, a wild animal that would hurt them. He says they really don't know any difference. He goes, and the one thing that the border collie has over the livestock, just like a wolf has over certain things, is the gaze in its eyes. And you'll watch them when they're working them. Those dogs will go into a down and they literally lock eyes with a particular animal or a troubled animal or one that's giving them a problem. And they'll give that dog the command to crawl up nose to nose with a big bull with huge horns. And that dog will sit there and just stare, face to face, with this thing. Or even reach out and bite him on the nose if he tells him to. And I always thought that was... And I've seen dogs do some pretty remarkable things, but there's just nothing stands up intelligence-wise, I think, to the border collie. I want to run through.
It's weird that you mentioned herding when you think about some of the behaviors of that people describe being herded out of the woods, hearing things paralleling them and feeling like they've been, encircled and kind of moved out of an area, either through growls, intimidation.
We hear that a lot, don't we?
Exactly.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
Because you hear people say all the time, something was paralleling me. It stopped walking when I stopped walking. It was, or there's some instances where it really just wants you out of there and it's not trying to be quiet. But I never thought about that.
Well, you think about what you just described as far as the physical, the behavior of looking in the eyes. It's like when people describe encounters, a lot of times that's what they describe as looking in the eyes. That's kind of the first thing they focus on, as well as the size. But as far as that giving them a message to move out, like the humans reading a physical communication from an animal, and we're reading what its message is to us based upon how it looks at us in the eye. Same way with putting yourself in the horse or the cattle's shoes, looking at what they can't distinguish as what a wolf is. If they can't distinguish what a wolf is, and they've got what they think is a wolf looking at them directly in the eye, then their mind is this thing going to eat me? Is this thing going to attack me? Same way with what probably our primal reaction is when we see an animal as that large, and that we know, at that point, physically we're overpowered, overmatched. So what messages are we seeing within, looking in the eyes, looking in the way that the mouth moves, the emotions that we read into this animal that looks at us and then herds us out of there? I mean, what message do we get? That's kind of the, I'd say kind of the context of where it falls, similar kind of into the herding and moving humans out of the woods.
And what's interesting is, and let's lump ourselves in with animals because we're animals on this earth. What's interesting is how you said it doesn't matter if we look at an actual animal's face, we're able to tell emotion in an animal's face. We're able to tell, not what it's thinking, but we're able to see different emotions, whether it's mad or whether it's afraid of us or anything. And I find that interesting, with us all being animals on the same earth.
Right. I mean, in looking at clips of stuff that we were going to maybe discuss on here, maybe put on here, I looked at some ape and chimpanzee documentaries, and just looking at the emotions that you see, that you recognize as a human in that fellow primate there. When they're looking at the camera, they're looking at each other and how they act and how their facial expressions change also. So that's very,
And it's probably just way more evident because they're closer to us. I mean, I'm sure that animals of the same species know every expression, every noise, and everything that has to do with their own species, kind of like we do with expressions on people's faces, if that makes any sense. Right. Yeah, I never really thought about that.
Moving on to what'd you have next? You had the
let's go up into some exotics. We're going to talk about just some of the fastest animals, not just dogs. I kind of did dogs because most of us, have dogs, so we can relate to dogs. But let's go up into a few exotics.
Plus that 40-mile-an-hour top range is similar to what, there seems to be a lot of the top end of the descriptions of encounter stories that I've heard being about the fastest people seem to relate to how fast whatever, was running alongside their car. Having a Bigfoot look at them as they're driving 35 miles an hour.
I've heard that story a bunch of times where people say it was running alongside the car.
Right. And I can't tell if it's just one story that I've heard so often that I just take it to be like, universal and there's a lot of stories that way, or is it just like one story? It's just
exactly.
All right. Like everybody's got the oh yeah, that's the Florida story. Oh no, that's the Pennsylvania story. Oh no, that's the Colorado story.
Yeah, didn't we see that on Finding? I saw it on Finding Bigfoot one night too.
Oh
yeah, some lady said it was running alongside the car, looking down into the car.
No, I know I've heard it on all this. I mean, God, at work I saw what used to do is listen to encounter stories for 8-9 hours a day. So I know I've heard it more than once.
It would
probably on Chronicles, probably on Outlaws, probably on, I don't know.
It would be way harder to convince somebody that you saw a Bigfoot running alongside your car than if you just saw one out in the woods somewhere. I mean, they sure wouldn't believe that it was running beside your car.
I don't know. One about a dog man too. Isn't there one about these guys in a two track, whatever? driving on their back of the land, and a dog man driving alongside them, and one guy shooting at it while it's driving alongside of it.
It's just like one of our outings at LBL, isn't it?
And then, yeah, that's right. And then the guy said, then he said that the what was it? The game wardens came in, and then they got the army to come in. They took all of his game cams, all of his cards from his game cams were gone.
Yeah.
But they did. Oh, we took care of the problem. Like that was a minute. Oh man.
Let's go through these fast animals. And this one surprised me. And I think it'll surprise most people. The 10th fastest animal in the world, believe it or not, is a lion. Think of all the fast. You would think that a dog could outrun a lion. But a lion.
Well, a lion's bigger, though. More muscle mass. I think that would give,
You're talking about something that weighs upwards of 400 pounds running 50 miles per hour in a very short sprint, though. An incredibly short sprint. And then we get into stuff like, a wildebeest. And if you notice, most of these things are things that hunt each other, or they're trying to run from something else. Kind of almost in a lot of them are kind of in the same area of the world. Even a lot of those animals that migrate on the plains, following the rains and stuff like that.
On the African savanna.
Yeah, the great migration out there. And a wildebeest does 50 miles per hour.
Dang.
Yes. And how fast? The next one is a quarter horse. How fast do you think a quarter horse can run? This surprised me because I've been around some equine vets that work on nothing
50
but thoroughbred.
About 53 miles an hour.
55 miles an hour.
That's what came into my mind first. I should have said it, but I thought it was too fast.
And that's not a thoroughbred or an Arabian that's a quarter horse. Like that's what they, use working. That's a working animal used for work. And it goes 55 miles an hour.
Dang. Okay. 55.
Have you ever heard of a springbuck?
Yeah. Yeah.
B-O-K. Like I'm country, so I say springbuck. But a springbuck is also one of those animals. It probably would look a lot like an antelope to most people. But it's another one of those that's getting chased and eaten out on the plains every day if it's not able to run 55 miles an hour and jump 13 feet in the air.
$55, damn.
Now, I know that there's some people in our chat that probably live out west, out there on those plains. And the fastest animal that we have, land animal here, is those pronghorn antelope. I've had friends that have gone out west and not just hunted them, but gone out there on vacation and talk about how fast those things are running, in a field alongside the car, And we're talking, take a guess.
I saw it already.
Did you? Did it?
I said
good.
61.
Did it pop up? Good. 61. But here's something that's interesting. I always wonder if something's fast, how far can it go? How much endurance does it have? And the thing about a pronghorn is they say those things can run for miles because of the technique that they've developed to run across that terrain. The way their legs move and the way they hop, they say that the body stays really, and we'll talk about this with another animal here in a second, but the body stays so smooth that it's efficient on its respiratory system and its circulatory system. And it can just go for miles at 50, 60 miles per hour.
Yeah, when you see coyotes and you see deer really moving, a lot of times they're just kind of springing, springing along. They're not running. It's more like a spring to their movement. And
And what's funny, they always talk about a Bigfoot uh, being like it's on like a cross country skier, the smooth, you know. And I was watching some show the other night. I'm sorry, I can't remember what it was, but a lady was describing one as it went from behind a horse trailer at her house over to a barn and step over about a 4 foot fence. And she said the one thing that she noticed was, she said the head never moved. She, in her periphery, she could of course see the arms and legs and stuff move. She goes, but the head never moved. Even when it got to the fence, took the step over, still never moved, at the same level.
yeah, you can. I, I I can't remember too many descriptions other than maybe, well, of encounters that really describe the physical movement of the fast motion of the legs, of seeing a Sasquatch or a Bigfoot moving. I've heard people say moving very fast, super fast, faster than anything I've ever seen. But I can't, and maybe I don't listen to many as many as I used to, but I can't really recall that many where there's a real good description of how the movement of the legs looks as generating speed from a
Other
physiological
than just
standpoint.
fast.
Right, right.
Right.
And right, I was moving fast. Well, what was it? What was it doing? Is like, and a lot of times when people describe it, it's tough for them to describe when they try to get specific about it. I know a lot of times people end up saying it looks like this, or I couldn't really describe how it moves, or when they say something, they always usually end up saying, "Does that make sense?" I know that doesn't make sense. There's a lot of times it seems to be that the movement seems to be unnatural in the frame of reference to what we've seen out there moving fast.
Right.
You know.
And I went to Hickman County, Tennessee, where somebody had a sighting, and went and visited those people. And it's some people that several of us know. I won't mention their name though, but that was their description. And they took me to where they were on a side by side, riding on their land on a dirt road, and they had a roadside crossing. And you're right. In all the questions that I could come up with of what did this look like, what was this doing, really the description you get is the legs and the arms were moving so fast it was like a blur when it crossed the road. And I just thought that was interesting because you hear that consistently,
right? And knees never locking out and staying bent all the time is what I've heard a lot of also. So if you think about that, with also the description of what knees being at a lower part of the leg.
right?
So if you were to think about generating speed from an animal that is that large and has that much mass, what would that forward looking lean might be in relation to generating speed also. I don't
And
know.
I have another theory for that I'm going to get to in a second.
Okay.
I'm glad you hit on that.
Because I don't know if that means that is that on bipedals faster or quadrupedal. So that's
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, the one thing that I've noticed, and I've told people working with a lot of dogs, is the back legs really are for propulsion. Now, we're not talking about a bipedal thing. We're talking about going back to something on all fours.
Right.
And we'll look at this in a second on video also, because I'm really going to talk about cheetahs here. It's the fastest thing we have. So we're going to talk about that for a second. The back legs are, if you look at your dog's paws, you'll see that there's usually a difference in size in the front ones and the back ones and the back paws. And the reason this is just me saying this from working with dogs for years and observing them all over the years. The back legs are really for propulsion. Those front legs are strictly for maneuverability, cutting, stopping, things along that line. And you're going to see that in a minute in slow motion if we can get this cheetah video up here in a minute. But like you were saying, people describing its legs pumping and its knees coming up, and how does it have that much power in its legs? And I've come up with a good deal about that. The number 4 animal is a cheetah. Actually, number 5 is a sailfish. I'm trying to kind of keep us on land here and not go off into the ocean. Number 4 is a cheetah. 3 is an African goose called a spur-winged goose that I've never heard of. 88 miles per hour. And I want to touch on these last 2 before I go back to this cheetah. But a golden eagle, I guess they're talking about in a dive with its wings folded goes 200 miles per hour. So now we're getting up into things that aren't on the ground anymore. We made it up into the air. And the number 1's a peregrine falcon at 240. But when we got these cheetah videos started up here, let's talk about this for a second. I'm going to see if I can explain this, because when I first read this, it was pretty confusing. And I've read this in medical journals, but really a lot of personal training medical journals for personal trainers. And in our bodies and animals' bodies, we have something called fast twitch fibers in our body. And that's simply fancy terminology for that's what gives you a burst of speed. So when you see an athlete, or when you see this cheetah up here, it's what gives you that really quick burst of speed to A, fight, or B, flight. That's just primitively, that's what it was developed for. Well, they figured out that a cheetah has a large number of these fast twitch fibers in its upper leg. That's the only place, is in the upper legs and those upper hips, to make it to where it can hit that speed that fast. So that's what gives it the burst of speed. And if they draw a picture of these fast twitch fibers, it actually looks like one of those DNA strand chains. That's the closest way to describe it. So when that cheetah takes off, or one of us takes off, or Bigfoot or whatever, it activates those things, and those fibers stretch like springs, and that's the way that they work. Now, the thing about a cheetah, and I have to talk about this because, God, they're so fascinating, but also I got to put my hands on one time. Gosh, it was almost an emotional experience. The guy that worked on our service dogs was also a standby emergency vet for a zoo. And I mean, he worked on all kinds of animals, everything from big, huge snakes to stuff like that. So he had a cheetah laid out on a table with a trach tube in it where it could breathe. And he was working on this cheetah. And gosh, if you had seen this thing from the tip of its nose to the end of its tail, you're talking something that's 75 inches long or something along that line. And I can remember just running. I asked him, I said, this thing's not going to wake up, is it? But I just ran my hands along that thing and just felt of all those, just the way it was built. That got me into this a little deeper. And I kind of was looking at some videos. This is like a little compilation here of some of them hunting. But I got into another video where scientists, zoologists, people like that actually study them and what makes them do what they do. We're talking about this. And it was so neat because the lady that was talking about them was so excited watching these things on a video, and she explained it perfectly. This was my long-winded intro of what I'm going to say. And that is, a cheetah is made for nothing but speed. Its only job is to run. That's it. It has the bite force of a house dog, which is maybe somewhere around 400 pounds per square inch is the only bite force that they have, because they actually, I don't know if nature has done this over a period of time, but they actually have sacrificed certain things that you would think would come in handy in hunting for that speed, because they have found that the competition they have out on the plains with these other big cats, their speed's more important than anything else. Even more than a jaguar that can take a jaguar can drag 150-pound deer all the way up in a tree and put it in the crook of a tree. A cheetah's made for just that one thing. So jump in there, Scott.
No, I was watching I was watching.
I know. I can't. I've watched that video so many times, and
I can remember watching these when I was younger, and a lot of times it was about how many times they miss their meals, and how tough a life it is to keep the cubs alive. I mean, it's not easy life for them, because they're fast for a short amount of time, but a lot of times they get outrun, and sometimes they get the tables turned on them.
If you look at this video here, this shows that a cheetah has the longest spine and the most flexible spine of any of the big cats. And you'll see your dog doing this too. But when those back legs come up on a cheetah, that back's like an accordion when that thing comes up. And along with those fast twitch fibers in the upper back legs and that spring of a back, those scientists said that if a horse had that spine, you'd be riding a 100-mile-per-hour horse if it had that type of spine and those type of fast twitch fibers. And I find that fascinating for something that really weighs anywhere from 46 to 140, 150 pounds.
Right. And when you talk about fast twitch fibers, that's what kind of gives the chimpanzees their strength also. And that's like, they have one and a half, 1 1/3 times the fast twitch muscle fibers than a human does.
It's interesting watching that first part. This is obviously, filmed on a safari or something somewhere. But and I'll get off this, but I noticed I noticed service dogs, if you send one of them to apprehend a person, man, that dog will run with his ears flat up against his head. I mean, he'll run like a cheetah as fast as he can. But, and we notice this especially in German Shepherds, when he gets out there along about 15 yards away, his ears will pop up, because he's trying to pick an exact target to go for on the person. There's certain dogs that don't even really look for a target. They just leap into the air and just land on it. A shepherd will really target a spot. And if you watch these cheetahs, first of all, that head is absolute. This is my favorite one right here. And for the people that are for the warthogs, the next one, the warthog, turns around on the cheetah, right, which happens a lot of the time. You're talking about something that only has really about a 25 to 40% success rate. So they're having to expend that kind of energy for, I think they said that they've got a shot at it in about 40 seconds to 60 seconds. Full out's about how fast they can hold that. I hope chats find this interesting.
I think they're. I don't know. Diane was thinking about the fur. I think so.
Oh, on a cheetah?
They're entertaining themselves. Yeah. Well, the fast twitch muscle fibers, and if you're thinking about size of what people are describing seeing in their encounters, you got to think about the fast twitch muscle fibers in that being are off the charts. You know,
That's
so
true. And
so
the cheetah shows you that it doesn't have to be a huge animal to have an. I mean, the cheetah has a number of fast twitch fibers that no other animal has. That's the oddity about it. We
right,
Bigfoot can, not that Bigfoot isn't odd enough, but it could have all kinds of traits and oddities and stuff, but we don't have any idea about it.
right. I mean, that allows just in the front legs of that animal allows it to go what 80 miles an hour.
Right.
80.
The last thing that I,
Can you imagine something cruising through the woods at 50 miles an hour?
right.
You know, just
And I don't know if I said
zipping
it,
through
but
the woods.
a cheetah goes 75 miles per hour.
Oh, 75. Okay.
75. And the one thing that but if you look at that thing, the type of terrain it's running on, it's really chasing stuff and the prey is trying to keep its footing. It just shows how sure-footed and smooth it is. And the last thing I want to cover with it is here's what's really something. I told you that they only have the bite strength of maybe a dog.
Right. That was
So,
interesting.
yeah, I couldn't believe that.
That's why it
So
took two of them to take down that wildebeest because they're not real heavy. I mean,
I got to digging deeper, to figure out, stuff about jaw bite strength and stuff like that along that line. And they said basically, now once again, I don't know if this is the way uh, whomever created the cheetah made them, or if this is something that that is has evolved over time. And I noticed somebody just popped up there and said something about a cheetah's tail. A cheetah's tail, man, is a rudder, period. I mean, that thing, there's some of those videos, and if you'll go back and watch it after we get done or later on, folks, it's hard for the camera to keep up on some of those cuts that those animals makes with that long, long tail. But anyway, that they said that a cheetah skull is so much smaller than all the other big predators, and they consider it a big cat. Even though some people say it, the way it runs and the way its feet is more like a dog's feet, but we won't get into that. But they said that it has sacrificed skull size, which has sacrificed the strength of its bite for huge, oversized nasal cavities. And I've noticed if you watch,
yeah,
and you watch those cheetahs run, their mouths aren't open, they're not panting. And I thought, well, maybe they're just getting a whole, maybe that's another reason why they're so fast. They're just getting a really good air intake. They said that one of the main reasons it was like that is because when they finally, and there's a picture of a skull, one of their skulls right there, that those nasal passages are designed to where when it catches the prey, this has to be quick because a cheetah is not designed for fighting. It's a pretty fragile animal. It's designed for when the cheetah gets its prey down to asphyxiate it, and that's the way it kills its prey, the same way a mountain lion or a panther would do one of us. It can clamp down, asphyxiate the animal, but can still breathe completely freely with the way that its skull has evolved over the years, or the way it's originally designed. I just thought that was super interesting because I think we can all relate this to Bigfoot some way. I want to get into this this last thing. Let me see what time it is. Now,
Go about an hour or so.
man, these fascinate me. And when I get to talking about octopus or cuttlefish, I mean, if you, and I don't know how familiar people are with them or anything like that, but some of the things they do are just out and out alien, you know. It's really one of the few things that, you know, seems to change colors and shapes and can mold into anything, and seems to be one of the most intelligent creatures on earth, they say. But once again, I always go back to the fact of, well, are they really that intelligent, or are they just intelligent where they need to be? So as we look up there at that, and it'll show some videos of how fast this thing can adapt to its surroundings and blend into its surroundings, like some of the other animals that show it.
Right.
And I thought, well, gosh, that has to be some super, I mean, that has to be really a super specific thing. I mean, they have to have a whole lot going on to just disappear out of sight with their camouflage. And really, I found out that there's not a whole lot to it, not that much to it.
Yeah, it's pretty common within the animal kingdom.
How many times have you heard somebody, and watch this short video before I get back into this? How many times have we heard stories where they say Bigfoot just disappeared, poof, or just appeared? Or I've heard lots of stories where I always think of one in particular where the lady's bow hunting and she sees something in the tree in front of her, and this thing, whatever it is, eventually reaches out to another tree and kind of oozes over to that tree. And I always think, man, the octopus may be the closest thing to a creature that could do something like that.
Yeah,
and that's often one of
if you were to describe octopus to somebody, say, hey, I was out in the ocean and I saw this creature had this spindly little legs going out, that little suction cups on it, and when I chased after it, it changed shape, tried to get in between rocks, turn the color of the rocks. I mean,
and then squirted black ink or something at me.
Right.
Yeah.
If somebody didn't know about it, somebody never heard about it, they might, have a tendency to disbelieve you if they hadn't seen it themselves. But we've seen that and what the octopus can do. Not unlike other insects, not unlike, what were we talking about? Different types of moths that had different larva stages that made them look like snakes to ward off any predators that would come and eat them.
Markings on their wings that look like big eyes.
Or even animals that imitate other animals to look more dangerous,
Right.
To look like I think there was different aspects of how the octopus can camouflage itself, but also disguise itself to look like other creatures within the ocean, bury itself and just have a couple of tentacles coming up to make it look like a totally different animal.
Yeah.
When it swims away, sometimes it looks kind of like a skate or like a sole, which is like as poisonous type of reaction to animals that try, or other fish that try to attack it. So yeah, I mean, there's many different attributes of animals that we don't think twice about because we've known them and studied them, and they've been documented by scientific, certification or validation, whatever that means. And a lot of the attributes that are described for Bigfoot and Sasquatch, people just don't seem to want to believe would possibly exist. But there are so many attributes of other animals and characteristics of what they can do that seem to defy logic. But once we see them, like the cuttlefish, like the octopus, the speeds at which cheetahs can run, the way that dogs can hunt. I mean, the realm of what behavior that we might see or attributes that this animal, might have, need to be probably looked at in a way that can be categorized. I think we talked a little bit about this as far as coming up with ways to, describe the behavior of these encounters, kind of quantify what the behavior of a Bigfoot's like. A lot of times it seems to be a lot of kind of innocuous, benign type of encounters that are just kind of people running across the paths of this animal and just kind of looking over his shoulder and walking off. Like okay, well, we can put that in one category. We've got some other categories that might be a bit more aggressive, where we don't have long encounters to where people can really categorize a long term type of behavior. So there has to be a way to start to gather the data of common factors within some of these encounters for the behavior of what this animal is, to where we can start to at least have a foundation, start to have a foundation about behavior, and then then maybe attributes can go from there. I mean, I've got I think a video that I might share on here, but it talks about a squirrel that can jump. Common for squirrels to jump 3 times their body length. That animal is a foot long, so it can jump 3 feet. Or you've seen squirrels out in your yard looking at the top of the fence, like, is he going to get up there? Is he really going to do that? Boom! He jumps up there. Like, damn, that's a pretty good jump.
Yeah.
And so if you think about, there it is, the fast twitch muscle fibers on scale, not unlike of what the cheetah spine would be on the scale of what a horse would be. And the horse would be over 100 miles an hour that scientists are saying. Then think about if at a minimum of a 7-foot creature that has the fast twitch muscle fibers and ability to jump 3 times its body length. It's 20. I'm not a mathematician or anything, but 21 feet. That's pretty good vertical leap, I would think. I mean, when people talk about turning around and not seeing something behind them, is Bigfoot just going tree, just jumping up in a tree. People talk about having their houses jumped on, having things on their roofs. An animal would be climbing up the side of some mountains that the typical person would have to have mountaineering ropes to help get up. Kind of just climbs up naturally. I mean, if those are things that you can start to see if there's a common thread in some of these encounters that are behavior and physical, behavior you can see and start to kind of build from there, then maybe some foundation can be kind of built as far as describing and trying to figure out where this animal fits in, and kind of explain a lot of people's encounters about not being able to see him, but also there's probably something that's we're not talking about as far as that distinguishes Bigfoot, in that that level of intelligence that wants to keep it away, or that its behavior keeps it away from us. Because if it was like all these other animals that we don't think twice about, we would have already found it. And why isn't that? That's that's where the unknown comes in and makes you have more questions than you had when you first got into this. Because I mean, just we're sitting here talking about animals that we know about, and they have some pretty amazing attributes to them and what they can do. And um, a lot of people that are skeptical about Bigfoot um, just don't think this animal can exist. But we see a lot of things that exist already in nature that don't seem that kind of defy logic and are pretty amazing. So it,
There's probably some people that don't even realize that an octopus or a cuttlefish does some of the things that they do. If you described it to, I mean,
right.
all we can do is for some reason, anytime we talk about Bigfoot, we compare it to us. That's what I say that all the time. I go, well, we're always comparing it to us. And why are we comparing it to us? Simply because it walks around on two legs. I mean, I think that's really all it is. And plus, we as humans, we really think we're the smartest and most intelligent, no matter where we're at. You know, we think we're the smartest.
Well, and it comes into where, again, looking around the animal kingdom and where we fit in, um, we don't, we just don't seem to fit in anywhere intelligence wise as far as survivability on this earth without our intelligence. You know, and if there's something else that's out there that fits in here, that's the more the apex predator than we are, and has a decent level of intelligence, and it would probably, for its survivability, want to stay away from us. You know, just from
Ruger brought up a good point. Ruger said, at least we're intelligent enough to know that we don't know things. I mean, really?
yeah,
I
yeah.
want to cover a couple of other things here, and then we'll see what some people's got to say on here. Gosh, how many stories have you ever heard of where Bigfoot are hunting as a group? You know, herding animals, or, I mean, we hear lots of stories of maybe hearing a wood knock here, and then there's another one over there, and then I heard one behind me. So it's obvious that they're probably group or family oriented. I mean, they have to have a social structure.
Mm-hmm.
But, man, do you think they really hunt together? Do they actually coordinate and come up with a plan and go put a plan together? Because there's really only 3 or 4 documented animals in the world that do. So I always wonder, you think they do?
You know, I used to think so, but more of, I don't know, more discussion I've heard, I think, have leaned toward looking at opportunity. You know, opportunity predator in a way, and I think, you know, I don't know how much effort a deer would be for a Bigfoot, but talking about the physical attributes that we think that might exist in this animal, you would think that would be fairly easy for them, I guess. I don't know though.
Yeah.
Um, but then you hear people that are like, well, my hogs got taken, my chickens got taken, to where, you know, whatever's easiest, don't need any help there. Um, you know, I've heard a few encounters to where people have seen 1 or 2 chasing deer.
I've
Um,
heard that too. Or herding elk, or just, whatever.
right. But, you know, I don't, you know, I think a lot of, I don't know, it might be that a lot of hunters are already hunting in their encounters. So if they're seeing a group hunt, I don't think that is very common. I think most of the encounters that I've heard as far as group hunting Bigfoot wise have been people that have just accidentally got in the middle of it, either
Right.
hiking or driving. I haven't heard
Right.
too many hunter encounters like that. Too many, but that's not to say that it hasn't happened.
I always wonder that because you hear stories all the time about. We assume that they all kind of walk up to each other in the woods and they're like, "Hey, man, you want to go hunting?" And you figure, okay, let's hunt this area, and this is what we're going. And we don't know what they do.
right.
If you look up there, you see these orcas, uh, and that's one animal that coordinates, comes up with a plan, and actually hunts as a group. And what's interesting about them, if you see them trying to wash these seals off these icebergs, there's a lot goes into it way before that part ever takes place. Even though they run as a pod of whales, they'll kind of send out a scout. And I noticed when I watch these that they will stick their head straight up out of the water real slow, and they're actually looking with their eyes to see what's up on the icebergs before they decide before they decide to wash them off there. Well, this particular video that I found on here, not only do they go about, trying to wash them off there, but they will actually go around and chip away to make the ice, the piece of ice smaller. If they can't get it washed off there, or if the block of ice is big enough, and this seal did escape, by the way, if it's big enough for him to get back up on there, well, then they start breaking the ice into pieces.
Right.
And other ones circle, and one of them goes up and starts breaking ice. And I mean, once again, I know I keep saying this, but this is one of those deals where when I watch it, I just go, good Lord. I go, man, how smart can things be? Well, they're really only doing one thing.
Well, yeah, but whales are highly intelligent. I mean, they have one of the largest brains of any, animal on Earth.
So you have these guys doing this here. This is the way they hunt here. But if you were to go over to, I think it's Argentina, over there, the whales will actually run themselves right up onto the beach and beach themselves to grab a. I mean, they look at the seals that are basking up in the sun right up above the surf, and they'll take a run up through there and beach themselves to grab a seal. And they'll actually be up on dry land or up on sand and have to try to figure out how to wriggle their way back into the surf. So let's all bring this back to Bigfoot a minute.
We got to get Larry to bed here in a little bit.
They got to be the same way. Some may hunt this way in this area. Some may hunt this way in another area. And it just depends on maybe what your family's taught you, or what biology's put in your brain, or
what's available seasonal. What's available seasonal, because I think people talk a lot about them falling around, blooms of fruit blooms, berries, apples, different greens,
But if you think about Bigfoot, don't you? Every time I think about it, I always assume that they're just eating meat all the time. They're running deer down, or they're snatching up a hog, beating them up against a tree or something.
That's what you would think. But you think about it, and this is what I was amazed about a gorilla is pretty much totally vegetarian diet. One of the strongest animals on Earth.
Exactly.
So who knows? I mean, and that's another thing. It's like going back to behavior. What have people seen in them eating? A lot of times it is, maybe taking the gut pile, but it's usually an internal organ. So maybe it's um, heard other people talking about them pulling coons out of trees. Just
Yeah.
whatever they can eat. I mean, if you're out there surviving, you're that big. I mean, I think you'd eat whatever you had to survive.
And you may not have to run 80 miles per hour if you can just reach over into a chicken coop, snatch a couple of chickens out of it.
Or if you live near a casino and they throw out a bunch of grease traps and leftover
That's
food,
right.
go to the dumpster.
Man, I got to say something about that one. Since none of us will probably ever see the video of that. But didn't we speak to someone that saw that video
Um,
or
I
had somebody on our show once?
I think I thought I can't remember the name of the host of the I think Dave down from Bigfoot and More out of Oklahoma. I think he had an opportunity maybe to see that.
The, the one thing that he said that stuck in my mind, you know what I'm going to say? Somebody said, I can't remember if we were in a chat room type situation or on a show or something, but somebody asked him, they said, well, how did it move or what did it do or something? And he said, it moved like liquid.
Mm.
And it gives me chill bumps. But that's what stuck with me. It's when he said it moved like liquid the way it moved, like water.
I can remember one creepy one I heard was more about on all fours, and that's another thing as far as physiological uh, description goes. Um, the spider crawl deal that and people describing dropping straight down or straight up from a sitting position and knees being right underneath the torso type of movements.
Yeah.
Like a Russian get up, like just straight up, and being kind of like hugging their knees in a position. So physiologically, the spider crawl. I think we're dealing with something that once understood or gotten to that point of where we don't think twice about it, because I think that day will come eventually, someday. I know it's been 50 years since the Patterson,
Right.
and it's been many years of native peoples saying that this does exist, and a lot of people not believing them. As far as mainstream, to when it is understood, I think you will be kind of blown away with what we find as far as everything that it physically can do and what attributes it has, and that's I want to be I don't want to be the Men in
Other
Black.
than just
Men in
big
Black,
feet.
right? I don't want to be the Men in Black, guy, but then what is that? What is that one thing that's kind of like distinguishing it that we can't find it? And if the government does know about it and they do know about its physical attributes, then why? What is it about these physical attributes that they don't want to let out?
Right.
I mean, what's the big deal? So there's another dangerous animal that's in the woods that might kill you. Well, we got grizzly bears, we deal with them. Got cougars, deal with them.
Mm-hmm.
People go in the ocean. You got sharks. Sharks are in there. We deal with that. People couldn't deal with Bigfoot. It's like, we haven't heard too many aggressive encounters, but maybe that's not to say that they don't exist, but would we not deal with them in the same way that we would deal with rogue bears and troubled bears? Would we trap them, dart them, and take them somewhere else, or eliminate them?
Right.
Is that if that's
If you're even able to.
I mean, that's the track record of how things are dealt with so far that are known animals that may pose a threat to humans.
Right.
So either maybe it doesn't present a threat, and they know that, or it does, and they don't want to tell us. That's the strange thing, is that, you know, if it's just another common animal, what is it that they don't want to let out? And when we do find out, that's will be the amazing thing. So that's why, getting back to the physical attributes, if people can kind of start to look for common types of physical attributes and physical features, maybe that's a good way to add a little bit more knowledge in this area.
Yeah, I was reading that comment up there on the television. You know, I think it goes without saying, they just don't want to be seen. They want to be left alone. They want to, but gosh, I mean, I know I say this all the time, but it's almost, in order for us to grasp it, if you haven't seen one, in order for us to grasp it, we almost have to have something to compare it to them. I
Right.
mean, and that's the way we are. That's the way our brains are wired as human beings, is we compare everything to everything. You know, I mean, all the way from our houses and belongings and stuff to physical abilities.
Well, that's where,
yeah.
like I mentioned, seeing a lot of documentaries on YouTube about chimps and gorillas, about some of the behavior that you see that are exhibited by the dominant male of the gorilla troop is similar to what some people describe in Bigfoot behavior. But you know, we don't want to go to. I don't want to go down that road of saying, "Oh, well, it's just another ape in the woods," because it's not. Because if it is, it would have been found already.
Right.
With as many anecdotal stories and encounters that we've all heard and they've been recorded throughout time.
If it were just an ape, it would end up like our documented apes do. People would poach them, kill them, trap them, put them in zoos for us to look at.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So that, yeah. And that, I think opens up another maybe future show sometime where we can take a little bit more look at maybe some of the social behaviors, maybe of the gorillas and the apes, and does that kind of fit in the context of maybe some behaviors that people have highlighted in their Bigfoot encounters, and seeing some of the family units, or seeing aggressive. Because I think what stuck in my mind, I don't know if I've mentioned this already, was about how the dominant males will try to avoid conflict and do everything to avoid conflict, and are usually pretty docile and pretty mellow unless something threatens his dominance or threatens the troop, which is his responsibility. So,
right.
You know, a lot of people talk about, well, you can run into good Bigfoot, bad Bigfoot. I got in this certain area of the woods and I never had any trouble with the Bigfoot around my property until I got to this certain spot, and then they became aggressive, so are there some things that we can observe that might translate over, or at least be along similar lines within some of these Bigfoot encounters, and maybe some behaviors that we can, use for at least maybe a jumping off point for comparison of what maybe some other apes do. But that doesn't account for a lot of the other descriptions of strangeness that people have within these encounters. But you've got to start somewhere with kind of a rational discussion too. And I think to where hopefully a lot of people can agree on is looking at behavior. Looking at, okay, encounters happen. What was the behavior of this animal during your encounter?
Right.
And that can just be a starting point. At least we're looking at gaining some type of predictability or knowledge. I think a lot of people know probably better than we do, who have grown up and have these within their culture, or who simply either say, "Oh yeah, we don't go into their areas," or "Oh, we just leave them alone,"
Right.
or we just coexist with them and move on. And
Right.
that's, I think, maybe for us that are trying to prove it to ourselves because we haven't seen it, don't have it within our culture, um, have a little bit more of a motivation maybe to dig a little deeper into this, and when maybe in reality, that approach of live and let live, and you may never know. There may be mysteries that just aren't found out.
Yeah.
And that's
It may not be figured out till after you and I are long
that's
gone.
right. That's right.
That's
That's
what I
right.
always think. When am I going to wake up one morning and turn on the news, and it's finally going to be on the news? The same way that the same way they did with UFOs or UAPs or whatever they're calling them now. It's almost like
Well, when
we
the
have to.
Pentagon wants some more money, then they'll say Bigfoot somehow is national security, and they'll get more budget to search for Bigfoot or something. Super
On the
soul,
news,
super
they
soldier
finally
Bigfoot.
they've given us permission to believe in it. Finally,
Yeah,
that's really what it comes down to.
you'll no longer fight. We'll just breed Bigfoot to go fight in wars. They're semi-intelligent, and we can give them AR. We're good.
Well, Scott, man, I hope that when we really started talking about this, uh, I wanted to get Scott on here because Scott, for people that don't know him, for all the listeners, Scott's super intelligent. I knew he would add a lot to it. He always has good input. And I really just wanted to, and this is always my thing, I wanted to put together a show for our listeners, And when I say listeners, there'll be people listening to this after this, but I'm always concerned about our chat, and those are our weekly friends.
Yeah.
And that really was the whole reason to put something together, because Larry's been a bit busy.
Right. And we wanted to take a dry run too. So we're glad chat was kind of patient with us as far as throwing this together, and appreciating now how much work really goes into this for Larry and Mark. And I want to thank
Yeah,
Larry
and
for doing some stuff on the back end with helping us out for sure.
yeah, he did. He's done a lot. And I'm sitting here looking at the same names on the chat that's in there all the time. And I appreciate all of y'all. And like I said, man, I know I get a little long winded, but man, my brain's full of this info. I got to get rid of it. It's kind of like my phone. I have to go through and clean out my phone. I got to go through and clean my brain out. So y'all have been the
Right.
the recipients of my OCD here.
Yeah. And when we come back, maybe we can get a little bit more involved with something more Bigfoot centric, but involving the chat a little bit more maybe next time. But we want to make sure, that we can come on here when Larry and Mark won't necessarily have the time to be on here, got other responsibilities going on, that we can jump in here and make sure that this goes on, and we can.
Yeah, and that's the thing about Larry's show here is we can kind of, we cover everything from camping to survival stuff to Bigfoot to everything. And I didn't want it to be a whole show just about, just animals, but I'm always comparing Bigfoot to what we know. So that's really, and I hope that we maybe put some fun facts in there and some things in there you didn't know. Yeah. And
we can have a show. We can have a show about moose maybe next time. That sounds a good topic for chat.
He's over there underneath those pillows asleep. I reckon he's wondering who I was talking to a few minutes ago.
And you've always got some good stories that you got tons of good stories about your old job and hunting humans. I still think that's a good topic one time that we should talk about when we don't have anything else to talk about.
Yeah, we'll think about that. Well, it's been fun.
We can do product reviews for tents. I know you got a good tent and you got that blow up mattress.
So. Right. We'll have to get into that sometime. I mean, really, we'll have to do a show on, because we camp a lot, and let me tell you what, man. If you
Yeah.
ever want to, if you want to ever learn how not to do things or do some certain things, you need to go camp with all of us.
That's right. And I think there'll be an announcement on that too. I think the little birdie told me that the meet and greet will be coming down. I think somebody had mentioned. I'm not setting anything in stone. I'm not speaking on behalf of anybody. I think it had been mentioned before that maybe March was the time. So people start looking at your calendars
Right.
for a little LBL meet and greet. I think we'll be in a spot that'll allow a good crowd.
Yeah,
So,
kind of a private spot, and that time of year is when they start turkey hunting at
yeah,
LBL.
that's a great time. I think that's a good time as far as hiking goes and getting around there because the leaves are down.
Right. They're starting to bud out a little bit,
Yeah.
but we're not really. Oh gosh, man, we're not going to drag a bunch of meet and greet guests to the tick infested time of the year up there,
No.
and all that. But,
And
hey,
that spot will be good too because it's got a lot more. Yeah, meet and eat. That's what
yeah,
Mark said.
yeah, you're
And that
right.
spot will be big enough and flat enough to where there's not going to be anybody else there except us. So we'll have
Yeah,
it all to ourselves. So everybody get looking on your calendars. March, as far as if you want to come out and watch Shelly help Mark put up a tent.
yeah. Well, y'all remember Mark's show on Thursday night
Thursday.
coming up?
Yep.
Uh, we'll all be in there for that, and I'll be back in the chat. It's a lot less stressful for me just to be in the chat aggravating people, I think. That,
Uh,
that I wouldn't be able to do this every week.
yeah, I think that's why Mark's the all-star. He's the Bigfoot all-star.
Yeah. Anyway, I'll see.
Enthusiast and host.
Yeah,
Producer.
exactly. Well, Scott, I've enjoyed it, my man.
Well, thanks for the time, Bama. Thanks for putting that stuff together and getting those clips together. Larry,
Well,
thanks for
I appreciate Larry, and I appreciate you and Mark, y'all putting this together. Like I said, just a little something for the listeners, and I hope you got something out of it. Maybe we'll see y'all about
yeah.
Thursday night.
Just think about those attributes of those animals that we know about and the ones that we don't know about what they could have. So
Right.
just kind of do that and maybe go out and look at some of those documentaries on some of those chimps and monkeys, South America and Africa, and some of the ape documentaries too. I think those will be interesting for people.
We're going to get into that. And in closing, we're also, you and I talked about this earlier, we're going to do a show on the Albert Ostman story.
I guess we are now.
We've got
There'll be some more research on that.
All right. Well, I'll let Larry play us out.
We
always
go pro and con. Maybe we'll go pro and con on that.
Yeah, we could. Yeah, we need to do that because I have some thoughts on that. But anyway, I'll say like we always do, man. I'll see y'all Thursday night. Night, footers.
Night, footers.